The disappearance of thinking people is almost never sudden. It begins quietly, with a feeling that something is wrong with you. You notice that in conversations you keep pausing, not because you don't know what to say, but because you know too much. You see connections others don't need. You notice contradictions no one wants to discuss, and each time you choose to stay silent, not out of politeness but out of fatigue. Over time, you realize a simple thing. Society does not require you to be intelligent. It requires you to be convenient, to speak predictably, think linearly, maintain the general tone, not complicate things, not ask unnecessary questions, not disrupt the atmosphere. This is not a conspiracy. It is a mechanism. Most social systems function on agreement, not on truth. Agreement maintains stability. Truth disrupts it. And a person who thinks beyond the norm becomes a source of tension, even if they remain silent. You begin to adapt, simplifying your language, trimming your thoughts, hiding your doubts, pretending that superficial answers satisfy you. At first, it feels like flexibility, a communication skill, social intelligence. But over time, something changes. You catch yourself playing a role more often and speaking from yourself less and less. This process is subtle. It doesn't come with conflicts or dramatic exits. It looks like adaptation, but the cost is high. Every time you make yourself simpler than you are, you lose contact with your own thinking. Not immediately, but gradually. You begin to feel a strange emptiness after conversations. Not anger, not irritation, but a kind of depletion, as if you spent energy not on exchange, but on filtering. You constantly monitor yourself to stay within acceptable boundaries. This requires more effort than it seems. At some point, clarity arrives. You realize that what is expected of you is not growth, but conformity. Not depth, but smoothness. Not honesty, but compatibility. And then an inner conflict arises. Either continue being part of the environment, constantly reducing yourself, or stop participating. It is important to understand, at this moment, a person does not hate others. He does not consider himself superior. He simply stops seeing meaning in constant self-suppression. He realizes that pretending has become a system, and the system has become a trap. This is where the disappearance begins, not as an escape, but as a refusal. A refusal to play a game where winning is approval and losing is authenticity. A person stops being actively present. He speaks less, appears less, explains less, not out of resentment, but out of understanding. Many confuse this with burnout or depression, but it is a different state. There is no chaos inside, there is order. No panic, there is a decision. A person clearly sees that continuing the previous way of living demands too much and gives too little. You may have felt this. That moment when you catch yourself thinking, I no longer want to explain the obvious, or I'm not interested in pretending this matters, or I don't want to be here like this. This is not weakness. It is a boundary. The first real boundary between your thinking and the collective noise. You have not left yet, but you are no longer inside. This is where a path begins that from the outside looks like disappearance, but from the inside feels like a return to yourself. The deeper a person thinks, the more their presence begins to unsettle others, even if they prove nothing and argue with no one. This happens not because of words, but because of the effect of reflection. Around a thinking person, things become visible that are usually hidden. When you articulate a thought precisely, you inevitably reveal where others rely on patterns. When you ask a calm question, it becomes clear who has never reached that level of reflection. You are not exposing anything intentionally. You are simply existing at your own depth, and that alone is enough. For many people, another person's intellect is perceived not as a quality, but as a threat. Not because you are right, but because next to you, they feel uncomfortable in their own thoughts. Inner tension arises, and it needs to go somewhere. Most often, it turns into irritation. You can notice this in small things: sharp jokes, dismissiveness, hints of arrogance, remarks that you overcomplicate things, that you think too much, that you should be simpler. These phrases sound ordinary, but behind them is a defensive reaction. A person does not want to feel insufficiently intelligent. That is painful. It is much easier to declare that the problem is not in themselves, but in you. This is how projection arises. You are assigned intentions you do not have. They say you look down on others, that you want to seem better, that you are deliberately showing off your intelligence. At the same time, you may be quiet, calm, unobtrusive, but the tension still appears. Because the issue is not behavior. It is comparison, which is triggered automatically, even without words. Over time, you begin to sense this in advance. You walk into a room and understand that it is better not to speak. Not because you have nothing to say, but because you already know how it will be received. You see the reaction before it even happens. This awareness makes communication heavy. You begin to monitor yourself, restrain your tone, soften your wording, hide clarity behind neutral language, not out of fear, but out of a desire to avoid unnecessary tension. But the tension remains anyway, because its source is not in the words, it lies in the difference in levels of awareness. And this difference cannot be fully masked. It is read in pauses, in the choice of topics, in the way you listen. Gradually, you realize another thing. Being yourself means constantly touching someone else's internal boundaries, even if you do not cross any external ones. It is exhausting, not because of conflict, but because of the background feeling that your presence requires effort from others that they are not ready to make. At this point, many make a choice. They do not want to become a source of someone else's discomfort. They do not want to constantly be an object of projection. They do not want to carry other people's defensive reactions, and so they begin to step aside. Fewer conversations, fewer contacts, less participation. Not because they do not like people, but because the cost of being present becomes too high. And this is how the next stage begins. Not isolation as protest, but distance as a form of self-preservation. The most subtle yet most destructive process is constant translation. Translating thoughts into simpler language, translating doubts into confident formulas, translating complex ideas into safe phrases. You get used to doing this automatically, in conversations, at work, among friends. You sense where to stop, where it is better not to continue, where a thought should be cut short to avoid losing attention or provoking irritation. It becomes a reflex. At first, it seems like a communication skill, the ability to be understood, to speak the language of others. But over time, you begin to notice the effect. Each such translation requires effort, not intellectual, but internal. You are not just simplifying words, you are simplifying thinking. When you constantly hold yourself at a level lower than your natural one, it affects you more than you expect. Thought needs space. It develops when it is allowed to go to the end. But you increasingly stop it halfway. Not because it is wrong, but because it is inconvenient. Over time, you begin to feel a kind of fatigue that is difficult to explain. You are not overloaded with tasks. You are not physically exhausted. Yet inside there is a sense as if you are constantly holding your breath, as if you are not allowed to fully exhale. Communication turns into work, not an exchange, but control. You monitor yourself so as not to be too precise, not too direct, not too clear. You get so used to this control that you stop noticing how much energy it takes. The most dangerous part is that not only your speech changes, your thinking changes as well. When you speak in a simplified way for a long time, you begin to think in a simplified way. Not because you want to, but because the mind adapts to the mode it uses. What is not used weakens. You may notice this in solitude, when you are alone with yourself, and suddenly catch a pause. Your thoughts move more slowly. Depth does not appear immediately. It takes time to return to your natural rhythm. This is a warning sign, but it is easy to ignore. Many do ignore it. They attribute it to age, fatigue, stress. But the cause is often something else. You have lived too long not at your own clarity, spoken too long not as you truly think, chosen convenience over precision too often. At some point, an inner protest arises, quiet, without words. You realize that you no longer want to explain the obvious, no longer want to search for acceptable phrasing, no longer want to reduce yourself to a format that is easy to digest. Not because you are better, but because you are tired of being less. This is not a sudden impulse. It is a decision that matures slowly. You begin to avoid conversations where you will once again have to translate yourself. You choose silence because in silence thoughts do not need to be distorted. There, they can go to the end. And this is where it becomes clear. It was never about people or topics. It was about constant self-limitation, the need to live below your level of clarity. When you realize this, the desire to participate disappears, not out of arrogance, but out of respect for your own thinking. You stop engaging in conversations that require you to reduce yourself. You preserve your energy. You reclaim the right to think fully. This is one of the most important turning points because after it, disappearing from the noise stops feeling like a loss and becomes a relief. At some point, it becomes obvious that society rewards not clarity of thought, but predictability of behavior. It values not those who see deeper, but those who do not disrupt the flow. Not those who ask precise questions, but those who confirm what is already accepted. You begin to notice this everywhere, in work, in discussions, in social roles. It is not the best ideas that are promoted, but the safest ones. Not honesty that is encouraged, but agreement. People who do not create tension feel comfortable. Those who do, even silently, gradually find themselves pushed to the periphery. This creates an inner split. You understand that you can be successful, competent, visible, but only under one condition. If you keep yourself within limits, do not go beyond what is allowed, do not call things by their names, do not expose systemic flaws, do not think out loud. And here a choice appears. It is rarely stated directly, but it is felt very clearly. Either you become visible but empty, or you remain whole but less visible. This is not a dramatic choice. It is quiet, every day. It is made through small decisions. You can agree in a meeting, in a project, in a conversation. You can nod, even when you see where everything is going. And the system will accept you. It will reward you for convenience, for lack of friction, for the ability not to interfere. But each such moment has consequences, not external, internal. You begin to feel that you are losing respect for yourself. Not immediately, but gradually. Because you know you could have said more, seen more precisely, done better, and you did not. Some call this compromise, maturity, adaptation. But for a thinking person, it feels different, as a loss of direction, as movement without meaning, as a life in which you are present physically, but not mentally. You may notice it by a simple sign. It becomes harder to explain to yourself why you are here. Not where exactly, but in what capacity. You perform tasks, fulfill obligations, but inside there is no engagement, no inner yes. It is at this moment that the desire to be visible disappears. Not because you are afraid, but because visibility demands too high a price. It requires abandoning clarity, precision, honesty with yourself. You begin to understand that being unnoticed is not always a defeat. Sometimes it is the only way to preserve wholeness. Sometimes stepping back is not a step backward, but an exit from a game whose rules no longer suit you. And then the choice becomes final. You stop striving for approval. You stop explaining your motives. You stop proving the value of what is already obvious to you. You no longer want to be convenient. You want to be real. And this is where many do what from the outside looks like withdrawal, but from the inside feels different, as the end of inner conflict, as a return of control over one's life. as a decision to no longer trade depth for recognition. Disappearance is not an end, because it is in silence that the real work begins. When the need to explain, justify, and adapt disappears, thinking stops being defensive for the first time. It becomes free. You no longer spend energy on filtering. Thoughts go to completion. Questions are not cut off halfway. Doubts are not hidden. A rare state of inner continuity emerges, where one reflection naturally flows into another without requiring external approval. This state is unfamiliar. At first, even unsettling. There is no external feedback, no validation, no reaction. But gradually, another feeling appears. Calm. Not passive calm, but collected. You begin to hear your own train of thought without interference. In that moment, it becomes clear how much energy was previously spent on maintaining presence, on conformity, on explaining the obvious, on smoothing out sharp edges. None of this is needed anymore, and the released energy returns to where it belongs. You begin to think more deeply, not because you try, but because nothing interferes anymore. Concentration appears, long, stable. You can remain with one idea as long as necessary, without cutting it short for the sake of someone else's reaction. Many are afraid of this stage. They believe that without society, thinking will weaken. But the opposite happens. When the pressure to be understood disappears, precision increases. When the need to be accepted fades, honesty becomes natural. Here, work is born that is impossible in noise. Not necessarily public, not necessarily recognized, but authentic. The kind that matches your level of perception, not the expectations of the environment. The kind for which intellect exists. It is important to understand one thing. This is not a rejection of the world. It is a rejection of distortion. You are not closing yourself off from people. You are closing yourself off from constant simplification. You are not running away from life. You are stepping out of a format in which life had become flat. Over time, the desire to return to the previous rhythm disappears. Not out of contempt, but out of clarity. You already know that the price of participation was too high, and that silence has given you more than any approval ever could. This is where the final shift occurs. You stop measuring value by visibility. You stop treating presence as an obligation. You stop proving your right to be yourself. You simply work, think, create. From the outside, it looks like disappearance. But from within, it is the first truly whole state, not escape, not isolation, but a return to the level of thinking at which you were always meant to live. And if one day you appear again, it will no longer be for acceptance, but for meaning. Because it is not those who lose direction who disappear, it is those who finally find it.